Probably got absolutely no idea when I first experienced this idea of a flow state. It was probably fishing or flying or riding a bike as a kid, where you're just engaged with something for hours and suddenly you're getting called to come home for your tea and the day is gone and you just had the most wonderful time. I don't know if I ever felt a direct impact from being engaged in some sort of mental flow state, but essentially you just become addicted to this concept of being in the moment, being involved in nature, often with friends, but quite often as well on your own. It's a really strange and difficult concept to explain. And time just flies. And it's the same if you're on the river or in the air, but that engagement with the activity just makes time move at a completely different pace to normal. For someone who doesn't paraglide, you might think, oh, fly fishing and paragliding are so different, and one seems incredibly risky, the other one maybe doesn't even seem that interesting if you're not a fly fisherman. Often I think both sports are mischaracterized. Fly fishing, if you don't understand it, people think maybe you're just sat by a canal warming up worms in your mouth. But actually it's a total involvement in nature. You're wading through a river, you're totally involved in the ecosystem that you're surrounded by, and you have to be totally aware of the species that you're trying to catch, understand its feeding habits, but also respect the environment that you're in. And it just gives you this incredible involvement with nature. And flying, sure, it's dangerous, or it can be, but once you're very experienced and competent at flying, it's not really about the fact that it's dangerous or an adrenaline rush at all. It's about decision making and probably staying in flow state to make the most of the day, whilst again being involved in an environment, understanding the weather, understanding the terrain that you're flying around, and just making good decisions. And there's some massive crossover here once you're experienced probably in both of these disciplines. And I'm sure if you asked a downhill skier or pro-level mountain biker the same, it looks incredibly dangerous, but for them it's just making good decisions and staying in this flow state.
Flow state, by definition, is the idea that we continue to do something just for the sheer sake of doing it, even though it may come at great cost, but we just keep going back for more. And it's this idea that when we're in this state or we're doing these things, nothing else seems to matter. One of the things I find most interesting about flow state is that we can't turn it on and off like a switch. Personally, it's never something I've just been able to access. But the great thing is that we can create the circumstances in which it materialises. And by this, I mean we can get into activities within our lives that allow us to enter into this state. Now, the key here, and the key that I found on a personal level, is that you want to be somewhere where the task isn't too easy because you get bored, and you don't want to be tasked to be too difficult because then it becomes stressful and overwhelming. It's like flying a paraglider in outrageous conditions. You're going to have a really, really bad time. But then if you're just ridge soaring in very smooth, gentle air, eventually you're going to become bored. So we look for this perfect sweet spot, and between those two, at that point, I think we find the magic. I think that's where we find this beautiful moment in modern life with our hyper-connected, social media lives and stuck to our phones, all the news outputs, everything. That's golden, to have that moment where you have nothing else in your head other than exactly what you're doing at that point in time. Every now and again we've got to ask ourselves, why we do these sports. I think, things like paragliding, it's inherently pointless. It's not something we need to do for survival, but there's this huge part that keeps bringing us back for more and more. I think that flow state has a massive part to play in that. Whether you realise it or not, I think that is the thing that draws us back to these sports. And it's not necessarily just sports, it's all sorts of activities, but this spreads throughout life, and I think it's a really, really special thing.
Oh my God! Don't say that.
Flow state serves as a wonderful distraction from the stresses and strains of everyday life. And for those that are lucky enough to have experienced it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But for those that haven't, or can't think of a time when they have, I would urge you to go and do some research and find out what things in your life could materialise into this flow state, and allow yourself to create these circumstances, because quite honestly, it's one of the best feelings in the world.